who would like to join us live and ask their questions directly during the Q&A portion of today's discussion. So for those of you who may be new, my name is Nadine and I work here as an advocate here at the Disability Digest. And of course, joining us today, Mr. Brian Therrien, our very own founder and CEO of the Disability Digest. And we are also joined by Philip Price. He leads one of the most supportive Facebook communities for people navigating the disability process. And please help me welcome our special guest for today, Attorney James Mitchell Brown. Jim has been representing disability claimants fairly new, I think, since 1973. and spent more than 53 years practicing disability law. And he's also the driving force behind the Disability Digest, How to Prepare and Survive Your Disability course, which has helped members protect their benefits and avoid the costly process of having to fight to get them back. Jim, we are honored to have you with us today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
All right. So now here's the thing, having a case that can get approved and having a case that stays approved are two very different things. And on average, approximately 1.9 million people apply for disability benefits each year, and roughly 687,000, only 687,000 out of the 1.9 million people are approved. And after approval, approximately 133,000 people annually lose their benefits. I'm not trying to scare you guys. And the people who get approved and stay approved typically have several things working in their favor. And the people who struggle are often missing one or more of those pieces. So today, you will learn from our industry icon with more than 5 decades of experience. So, whether you are applying for benefits, appealing a denial, already receiving benefits, or helping someone you care navigate the process, I encourage you to stay with us through today's discussion. And I think you're going to walk away with answers to questions you may not have even realized you needed to ask. So at this point, I'll turn things over to Brian. Brian, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you very much, Philip, Nadine. Great to be with you. And of course, Jim, great to have you back on our show. So have a series of questions for you, and these are framed around people that unfortunately are sick, injured, have some diagnoses. Maybe they're starting the process or even still working, going through it. And they just, there isn't like there's a whole website out there of actual how-to information from Social Security that tells people what to do. So I'd like to start with this, Jim. What is Social Security actually looking for to evaluate and approve a Social Security disability claim?
They're looking for, first of all, the diagnosis you have, but that's not enough. They're looking for your restrictions, physical and mental. How much can you lift? How long can you stand? Can you reach, push, pull? Are you easily distracted? Can you get along with coworkers? Can you follow instructions? But the limitations you have are more important than anything. A doctor saying you're unable to work is worthless because the doctor doesn't know all of the jobs that exist in the country, and if you can't do any of them. You have to prove not just that you can't do your former job, but that there's no other jobs you can do. And Social Security is looking for all of your restrictions to plug them in and see if you're able to do any other jobs based on your age, your education, the work you've done in the past, and the disabilities you have.
Yes, so there's some nuances there. You mentioned age and education, but what I'm hearing from you is that it's not just about what you have, your diagnoses, right? So they don't approve based on that. They're looking for, would you say they're looking for what you cannot do? That's
Right.
it.
They were looking for the restrictions you have
Hmm.
because of the diagnoses you have.
Yeah, yeah. Um, you've been doing this for a while, as Nadine indicated, and if Social Security is looking for those things, where is the breakdown? The why is the barrier to approval so high and so many people go through the denial process? Is there anything specific that stands out?
At the initial level, there's a few reasons why claims get denied. The first is that they don't have a good teaching mechanism for the people making the initial decisions. They get on the job training, they shadow people, they
Hmm.
learn as they go along. There ought to be ongoing detailed classes to teach the initial decision makers how to make these decisions.
Hmm.
I have met with people in Congress repeatedly and said this should be done and it should be done properly so that less people get denied initially and we would have less appeals. Secondly, people apply too soon. You have to prove you're going to be off work for 12 or more consecutive months. If you apply a month after you stop working, it gets to the initial decision maker 3, 4, 5 months later. And in their mind, they're saying, how does this person know they're going to be off work 12 months? They applied right after they stopped working.
Hmm.
And every one of them has been chastised for paying a claim when the person went back to work less than 12 months after they stopped. So if
Hmm.
they get the claim too soon, they're going to turn you down because they don't want to be written up for paying a case that shouldn't have been paid. Um,
Okay.
that's a big problem. I recommend not applying until you're off work at least 4 months.
All right.
The
All right.
third reason people get denied initially is because Social Security doesn't get the medical in time. They have certain time limits that have become more severe in the last 15 months, 14 months, and they have to make a decision in a certain amount of time from when they get the claim.
Hmm.
They send for medical. If the medical doesn't come in, the case is denied.
Hmm.
When I represent someone and I file a claim, I send for the medical immediately.
You do.
Yep. I like to get the medical. I give it to the claims rep. They get credit for having gotten that medical. But
Hmm.
I've made them happy because all the medical is there. If you're doing it yourself, get your medical first. Now, if you just get the cover sheet to my chart or what your doctor gives you from my chart after an appointment, that's not medical.
Hmm.
You need to dig deeper into my chart and get the actual doctor's notes from the appointments. You need the real medical and file that with your application. But they need real medical records. Um, I had a case denied recently for somebody that absolutely was entitled to benefits, and I will win it on appeal. But the doctor refused to provide her medical records. She insisted on providing a letter, and included in her letter was this person is entitled to benefits and they should be granted. That annoyed the judge. He wanted this claimant's medical records so that he could see all of the treatment she'd received in the past 3 years. And
Interesting.
the judge even had his assistant request the medical records, and the doctor refused to provide them.
Mm-hmm.
This was somebody who'd gotten psych care regularly for probably 7 or 8 years. Had the judge had those medical records, he would have paid the claim.
Okay.
So you need the real medical records.
Mm-hmm.
This doctor is going to give them to me now that she sees the claim was denied for lack of records. It's a shame my client had to go through that, but get your medical records too. Claims are denied because there's not enough medical. Somebody came to me whose claim had been denied, and I looked at the denial, and the hospital records weren't there. This is somebody who'd been in the hospital 9 times in the 12 months prior. I obtained the 16,000 pages of medical records and filed them with the reconsideration, and the case got paid immediately.
Wow. Jim, question for you. When you are submitting claimants' medical records that you've collected or they've collected, is Social Security still requesting medical records, or do they call that off because you've done it?
If I've done it, they call it off. I will have claims rep from DDS call me when they get a case and say, "What did you send for?" And I tell them, and they don't send for those then.
Okay. All right. Interesting. That's good to know. All right. We're covering some really good information here. Let's pivot to the mindset of somebody who is applying or seeking their benefits. What what is, is there like one of the biggest misunderstandings that people have out there about what Social Security is actually evaluating?
Yes, and it's caused by Social Security because in the Social Security regulations, it lists conditions that are um, that they can grant disability for. Diagnosis is not a disability. Yes, you can have a herniated disc. That doesn't mean it's going to disable you.
Mm-hmm.
You have to show if you can have a herniated disc, have surgery, and be able to go back to work. You can have multiple sclerosis and be able to work.
Right.
At some point, it will probably prevent you from working, but at what level are you? So the diagnosis is not a disability. And too many people read the Social Security regs and say, well, I have this condition, I'm entitled to disability.
Yeah.
And they're not. They don't have the severity of the impairment.
Yeah. This is one area where I am seeing AI is not is definitely causing some questions for that very reason, because there's some beautiful benefits of AI, but putting in a condition and asking for the blue book, return that you qualify for degenerative disc disease because you have the diagnosis is not ideal. Yeah. Um, all right. Back to the decision process for Social Security. I don't know if you have an updated handle on if things are getting caught up. Last I knew it was like 233 days in some of the states like Texas and Florida, which is a long time. I mean, why is it taking so long? Like California is another one. I have a specific individual that she's been waiting for initial decision and reconsideration. She's now on month 14. Um, any any thoughts on that?
Yeah. First of all, depends on the state you're in. The first two decisions, the initial and the reconsideration, are made by disability determination services. Those are state agencies funded by the federal government. In Texas and Florida, they're not spending enough money on it. They're diverting the funds into other uses, and they're not spending the money they should evaluating people's disability.
Okay.
They should be spending it, because if they granted disability, they would be bringing more federal dollars into their state. In California, they're not getting enough money to evaluate all of the claims they're getting. And it's a matter of how much money is the state getting, how many people can they afford to have evaluating these claims. At the
Mm.
hearing level, it's again a totally different situation. How many judges do they have? A lot of judges took the early retirement when Social Security, when the federal government let people buy out 6 months, get 6 months of pay, and then get their full retirement. So they're short of judges. In Columbus, Ohio, a lot of the hearings are now sent to Michigan to be heard. It's a matter of how many judges are in the region you're at. And then once the case is heard, even if the judge makes a decision, how many people do they have to word process that decision once it's dictated?
Mm-hmm.
And they're short-staffed. There's 30,000 less employees working at Social Security now than there were 13 months ago.
Wow.
30,000 is huge. The commissioner said our technology is going to be so great that you won't notice the difference. They're still using a platform that was created in the 60s to run their Social Security system. Since the early 90s, Social Security has been trying to upgrade its computer system. They would be using Social Security money to upgrade it, and Congress won't allow them to do it. So what I would recommend is, if people ever go to candidates forums, if they're going to gubernatorial candidate forums, they should ask how they would spend the money from the federal government to improve the processing of Social Security disability claims in their state, since the first two levels are done by the state. Second thing they should ask people running for Senate and U.S. representatives is, will they support upgrading the Social Security computer system? To be perfectly honest, most people in Congress don't know how bad the system is. They look at dollars, they don't think of how bad it is. But everybody in Congress has somebody in their office who only answers Social Security questions. They get more calls about Social Security than anything else. But they don't realize that if the system were upgraded, everything would work better.
Mm-hmm. Well, I could say simple thing, but it's probably not simple. One thing, and it's not like it's going to come back in fashion. It's outdated. Yeah. Um, so that is impacting the decision process. Once somebody is approved, I'm seeing some issues with back pay. Like, it seems like it's taking longer. Is that related to this? Is there any connection? What's going on there with back pay?
Actually, um, there are a few judges who like their decisions to go right to the payment center. And when they do that, the payment center contacts the local office. I've had clients actually get their money before they get their decision. That's if it's done properly, which is rare. Usually it goes to the local office. Somebody has to do a little bit of work and then press a couple buttons, and then it goes to the payment center, which is one of the places they've had massive layoffs, and because of the hiring freeze, they're short-staffed.
Mm-hmm.
I have a client now who's on dialysis. She went on dialysis since we filed the claim. And she just got a letter this week that says, you've met the medical requirements for disability. Now we have to evaluate your non-medical requirements.
Mm-hmm.
There are no non-medical requirements. She's not working. She doesn't have any workers' comp claims. There's nothing to offset it. But somebody at the local office decided they have to look at her, look at everything about her before they're going to press the last button to pay her.
Yeah.
And partly it's because with 30,000 less employees, they're moving people around from one position to another. There's a lot of people doing jobs they don't know how to do. I don't fault them. They got moved into this new position
Yeah.
and they're trying their best. But if you don't know what to do, you're afraid to make a decision too fast because that might jeopardize your job. You might make mistakes. So you're overly cautious doing things, and that delays payment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This is great. Um, just a heads up, I see the comments are just like flying in here. We're going to have an FAQ at the end. Nadine will give you directions on how to do that. So just continue to do your thing. We'll get to as many as we can. So thank you for those. You know, one of the things, if somebody's listening, I said the word back pay and you're talking about back pay and they're out there scratching their head, like, what is back pay? Could you provide an example for somebody, everybody listening out there, what it is, what they could expect?
A claim I won recently, the person was found disabled effective February of 23, but she didn't file her claim until February of 25.
Okay.
Her back pay only goes back 1 year from when she filed. So her benefits started in February of 24.
Mm-hmm.
She won her claim in 2026. So her back pay is the money from February of 24 until April of 26 when we won her claim. That's the back pay. The future benefit is what she gets every month from now on, as long as she's unable to work, until she reaches age 65, at which point it automatically transfers into retirement benefit.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same amount. Her checking account won't notice the difference. The money just comes from the retirement fund instead of the disability fund. But the back pay is the money they owe you from the time you became disabled through the time they first pay you.
Okay. Just a little deeper dive on this. So somebody is out of work for, let's say, 24 months, 2 years, right? So they can get 12 months of back pay if they do their claim successfully, right? But the other
Or
12,
19 months.
19 months. Yeah. But there's some money they're going to leave on the table, right? So
Yes.
again, yeah. Can you explain, like, for people that maybe they're okay with that, but to make people aware that you want to file at a certain point in time if you want to maximize all of the potential back pay that you can get? How would you address that to somebody out of work for 24 months?
Social Security doesn't pay you for the first 5 months you're off work.
Yeah.
They only go back 12 months in paying you. So you have to apply within 17 months of when you stopped working to maximize your benefit.
Mm-hmm.
I just won disability recently for somebody who stopped working in 2012.
All
We
right.
proved she was disabled going back to 2012, but she didn't apply for benefits until 2023. So her back pay only started in 2022. They didn't go back to 2012. So she left 10 years on the table.
Ooh. Yeah, so 10 years on the tail. Let's say the check is easy math, $2,000 a month, $22,000 a year plus Medicare, so $220,000.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. It's not all right actually, but I'm just saying that to transition on to our next point.
Well, on that case, I blame the lawyer who handled her very serious accident case for not telling her to sign up for disability.
Oh,
He was busy representing her on an accident case, had a trial, but should have said, you probably should get disability while this was going on,
right.
and he didn't.
Didn't. Uh-oh. Um, I'm gonna go back to another high level question, Jim. What's the biggest mistake that you see that people make when they're seeking their benefits and applying? Is there one that stands out?
Biggest mistake I see, and it's when people come to me on reconsideration or when they're requesting a hearing, is they didn't list all of their impairments. And when I represent someone, I ask them questions from the top of their head to the bottom of their feet. And I had a case a couple years ago where I was doing that, and I got to the man's shoulder, and he said, well, I can only lift my shoulder to parallel to the ground, but that's from an old high school injury. And I've been working 35 years with that restriction. That wouldn't have gotten him disability, but the limited range of motion combined with everything else put him over the top and got us the disability.
Okay.
So when you're filing your claim, list everything. I filed a claim for someone with autism, and I included his torn rotator cuff, the torn ligament in his knee, his broken left toe. None of that really mattered, but we had a judge who was not a very nice judge. And because of that, when I was asking questions of the vocational witness, I was asking every combination of impairments possible until the judge told me to stop asking questions. He was approving the claim. But this was a judge I didn't trust, and I wanted every possible impairment in there just to make sure the judge couldn't turn the claim down on the autism. And I made the judge surrender.
Jim, you win. How many questions did you ask him?
I know how many questions because the judge filed the complaint against me. I,
Uh,
I asked 36 questions, taking an hour and 37 minutes.
yes. Love it. Love it. Um, this is the work in going through the disability approval process is the area that I want to go to next. Social Security allows you to apply and earn a certain amount of money, $1,620, I believe it is, somewhere around there. But what's your opinion on the impact of work and earning money while you're going through the disability approval process? And I just I want to also phrase this by there's if there's a difference for somebody that is under 50 because what they need to prove is different than somebody over 50, then include that in there if you would for the audience.
Okay. Well, there's a few parts to that question that you left out too.
Okay.
Every year I get some people who apply for disability while they're still working and making well over the amount that Social Security approves. And they say, well, I'll stop working when I get my disability. It never works that way. If you're working, you can't say to Social Security, I'm unable to work, because it doesn't work that way. If you're working, you're able to work. So don't do that.
Okay.
Secondly, the closer you are to their limit, the less likely you are to get disability. You can earn $1,620 now. If you're earning 1,600, Social Security is going to think, well, you could really earn 1,625. You're choosing not to. So if you're making $900 or $1,000 a month, and you can keep a diary and show that at the end of a workday, you've had it, you can't do any more. You come home, you go to bed, you're irritable, you can't get along with anybody. Um, you can barely walk at the end of the day, you're in a lot of pain. There's nothing wrong with that. That's fine to do. every month somebody calls me that Social Security is cutting off, who is earning right up to the penny the amount of the limit to SGA. And with them, I say, well, why did you stop at that? And they said, because I didn't want to lose my disability.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's saying to Social Security, I could earn more, but I chose not to.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to get cut off. I
Mm-hmm.
tell people getting disability, keep your earnings $300 to $400 a month below their limit, so you're not waving a red flag in their face.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Good
I,
point.
I, I frankly like it when my clients, while the disability claim is pending, try to work.
Okay.
If they make an effort to work and can make $600 or $700 a month, even $1,000 a month, and they have a good diary of how they felt afterwards, that shows an effort, and the judges like that. If they made an effort to work and they couldn't do it, that's even better. Here's somebody, they worked for a month, they were miserable, they were bedridden, they did their best, and it shows they're trying. And that
Mm-hmm.
helps too.
Jim, on an individual that is working and coming home and just absolutely, wiped out, can you speak to the audience about special accommodations and how requesting, obtaining those relative to the income, how it would impact it? Does my question make sense?
Yeah. If you need accommodations to work, you're entitled to your disability. Again, depending on the accommodations. If you need an accommodation and you can make $50,000 a year, you're probably not.
Yeah.
But unless that accommodation costs 40,000. And I say that because I represented a quadriplegic who was making $75,000 a year, but his accommodations cost 65,000. So he was a great salesman, but he couldn't do it without an aide taking care of every need of his.
Mm-hmm.
But if you need an accommodation, like a client I had with muscular dystrophy, and she needed an aide to sit her up when she slid down in her chair,
Okay.
and to move her hands back on the keyboard when they fell off, and to take her to the bathroom because she couldn't go by herself. That accommodation was expensive, and the cost of that accommodation let her keep working, but brought her below the substantial gainful activity level and kept her entitled to disability. So you look at the individual, what the accommodations are. And I had one case, I sent a form to doctors and asked for restrictions, limitations. And I had one doctor tell me she didn't like my form. And I said, I've been using this form, I change it periodically. And she said, it's not very good. And my form is usually 3 or 4 pages long to the doctor. And she sent me one that was 19 pages long that included 22 accommodations my client would need to work. And I started to ask questions of the vocational witness at the hearing. And the judge said, how many questions are you going to ask? And I said, depending on her answer, between 300 and 400. The look on the judge's face was great. And he said,
I have dinner
I,
plans tonight. Let's hurry up.
no, he said, I will agree that with any 2 or more accommodations, your client is unable to work. I said, well, I was going to leave out the one that said he needed a close-in parking space. And the judge said, I'll even give you that one. And that hearing ended quickly, and the judge approved the claim. But if you need accommodations to do your job and the doctor said you need them, that usually precludes employment.
Okay. Good point. Let's go back to the application part. when somebody submits their application, I think there is a false sense of, I don't know if it's security is the right word, that people submit their application online, which is, their doctor's medication, work history, etc. And they have, kind of this comfort feeling. But can you explain to them that they're not really done? What happens after the application is submitted?
Well, if you submit it yourself, you can sign it electronically.
Yep.
If your representative submits it for you, you get an application in the mail that you have to sign and return, or else it's not considered a valid application and they dismiss it. Make sure you sign it and return it. They don't notify your representative that they sent you that application. So call your representative, tell them you got this form, and sign it. And it's buried in the back, like 9 or 10 pages into it, where the place to sign is. They're supposed to send a return envelope with it. They sometimes forget. But
Mm.
it goes to the field office. It should be the office closest to you, but sometimes it's not.
Okay.
They then log in the claim. The claim gets registered in Baltimore, where the head of Social Security is. Before Social Security went electronic, the file actually had to be shipped to Baltimore and then be shipped to the office in your state that processed disability. They would find that the files spent hundreds of days on trucks, which was unconscionable.
Wow.
In any event, it goes to the state office that processes the disability. It gets assigned to a claims representative. That person reviews it. They will often call your representative and ask if they could talk to you. I almost always let the representative talk to my clients. They're going to ask some questions about the work you did to clarify it. They may want to ask and make sure they have all the doctors you've seen.
Mm-hmm.
If all your medical evidence doesn't come in, they sometimes ask if they can send you to a doctor of their choice. None of the doctors that Social Security uses are really good, competent physicians.
Uh-oh.
I was being politically correct when I said that. None of them are your friend. And I recommend that you write out a list of all the problems you have and hand it to the doctor. I also recommend that you make a note of what time you got there for your exam, what time you were brought into the examining room, if the doctor came in or a nurse came in, who questioned you, and if it's a physical exam, what they did. Did they have you walk on your heels and toes? Did the doctor touch you? Make notes like that. There was one psychologist I know of who said every exam was 2 hours and most of them were 20 minutes. And I actually went with my client. I brought one of those big battery operated wall clocks with me. And I stood outside the room. We took a picture when my client walked in, took a picture when my client walked out. And we did that a few times and sent it to DDS, which naturally didn't believe me. But they actually sent an investigator to time some people going in and out. And then they fired the doctor. I wanted the doctor indicted for perjury because he was submitting bills for 2-hour exams when he was doing 20-minute exams and for all these tests that he didn't do. And they wouldn't do that. But one of the things I recommend if you're getting a psychological exam, some of the psychologists they refer you to want to say, you're doing this because you need money, aren't you? Some of the physical exams say that too. And they think you have something called compensation neurosis. There's nothing wrong with you. You're just doing it for money. And if any doctor says something to you about money, don't answer that question. Just say, I wish I could feel better. I like my work. I like seeing people. I like going out to lunch with my coworkers. And if they bring it up again, but you really need the money, I really wish I could feel better. No money is worth the money I'm going to get. And never say you're doing it for the money. That just triggers a whole report about there's nothing wrong with you. You just want money.
Mhm.
So never answer that question. Just divert it to why you want to feel better.
Mhm.
You throw them off.
And one of the other tips you had informed us in a prior show is to be careful about how one answers the question, how are you today? Could you explain that one?
Right. If they walk in and say, how are you? And you say, fine, they're going to think nothing's wrong with you.
Yeah.
So even when you go to your own doctor and the doctor walks in for your exam and says, how are you? Start with what's wrong.
Yeah.
The word fine should be eliminated from your vocabulary.
Mm-hmm.
Always tell them, start with everything that's wrong and why you're there and all the problems you have.
Mm-hmm. This is great. We have a few more questions and we're going to transition. You mentioned the medical records. Well, actually, I want to back up a little bit. You've mentioned a representative a few times, attorney, non-attorney representative. Uh, and oftentimes people they ask, like, should I get one? Do I need one? How would you answer that?
When I started representing people, 8% of the claimants got attorneys. And it was only attorneys then. People would go in, they'd have a hearing with the judge would send for the medical. Sometimes he'd call the claimant back they weren't judges, they were hearing referees then,
Right.
to discuss the claim a little further. And it was very informal, and most people didn't need an attorney. The system changed dramatically in the early 80s. They made it much more difficult. Now it's in the high 80% that get attorneys. If you don't have an attorney, you're at a big disadvantage.
Mm-hmm.
You have to cross-examine a vocational witness. Sometimes you have to cross-examine a physician, and you don't know the rules of Social Security to cross-examine them properly.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, how soon should you get one? If you're going to hire an attorney or a representative for your initial application, ask them what they do. Do you get the medical when you file my claim, or do you leave that up to Social Security? Do you send a brief to Social Security on my initial application? If they say no, I leave it up to Social Security to do all of that. You don't really need them. If they say yes, I get sent for the medical and I send them a note to Social Security telling them why they should pay you, then you have somebody who's earning their fee.
Mm-hmm. Good points, Jim.
At the hearing level, you're foolish if you go to a hearing without an attorney or a representative. It takes a skill to cross-examine a vocational witness. And I have a case right now of somebody who's probably 30 years old. He's getting 100% VA disability, and he took his Social Security hearing 3 years ago without an attorney
Ooh.
and was denied disability. He appealed to the appeals council, was turned down again. And I won him disability starting with the day after the last decision. And I've now filed a motion to reopen his old case based on the fact that he wasn't represented, he didn't know what he was doing, he didn't know how to cross-examine the vocational witness. It's going to be really tough to reopen that old claim 3 years after the decision, but it's worth a shot.
Was there mental illness that allowed you to do that, or what is it that allowed you to do it? What regulation
Yeah,
are you leveraging?
well, there's a couple things. One, the judge should have made it clear to him that he had the right to be represented and the hearing would be continued if he wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
The judge asked him if he wanted an attorney, but didn't say, we'll reschedule the hearing if you want to get a representative.
Mm-hmm.
So that was part one. Part two, he had a traumatic brain injury and he had depression where he's been getting electroshock therapy for 6 years now. And there's some good grounds. It's still going to be difficult to get the appeals council to reopen it and remand it back for a new hearing, but it's worth trying for him.
Well, good for you for putting the effort in. Yeah. Yeah. Jim, we've talked a lot about medical records. When you're looking at medical records, evaluating somebody and you want to, formulate the brief to submit to Social Security, what is it that you're looking for? Is there like one or two key things that, when you go through those and boom, there it is?
I'm looking first to see if people are getting regular medical care. Now, for some things, you don't need regular medical care. I had a client with cerebral palsy that was denied. He couldn't lift his head off his chest. There wasn't anything they could do for him. He needed to see the doctor every 4 months to get a prescription refilled. That was regular medical care in that condition. If you have severe pain, you need more regular medical care, more constant care. Sometimes mixed in with a pain management doc and meds, physical therapy, chiropractic care, to show you're doing everything you can to take care of your pain is helpful. Sometimes you get it and it makes you worse and you say, I tried and it didn't help. But I look to see what's in the medical records. What did you tell the doctors? I like a medical source statement that gives me restrictions. I usually will get the physician's records first and then add some questions to my template of a medical source statement that are specific to that patient. So I just had one where the person had some extensive psychiatric care, but my client also had fibromyalgia and rheumatoid arthritis. So I put in a few more questions to the psychiatrist about those two conditions and how that affected her psychiatric condition. And the psychiatrist came back, or the psychologist came back with some good answers. And then because I knew this is a psychologist who understands the listings, I asked her if my client met certain listings, and she answered that she did and gave good explanations why. So I like to read the records first. What am I looking for? I'm looking to see exactly what's in there. Sometimes I will read a consultative exam that totally contradicts what my client's physician says. And in that case, I'm going to read the medical records and dictate a letter to the claimant's physician and say, according to your records, you saw your patient on this date and found this and this, and on this date found this. And it's something that directly contradicts what Social Security's doctor said, but I make it very easy for the client's doctor to take my letter turn it into their own response and send it back to me. And usually my clients' doctors are very upset reading what Social Security's doctors said about their patient.
Mm-hmm. 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 Interesting. I have one more question for you. Kind of a curveball, but I'm going to throw it out there. And all the time that you've been doing this, if you could look back, knowing what you know back now, if you were to look back on your practice in like the first 10 or 15 years, is there something that stands out that you would tell your younger self that I should have been doing this in the first 15 years? Like something like you just said with the medical records, or waiting the few months to apply, or medical source statements. Any one thing that stands out that really is like would be a changer?
I would have been reading the medical records better. I have bought through the years a lot of medical textbooks. I used to buy medical textbooks for attorneys, and then I started buying medical textbooks um, and reading what the doctors are reading. We had a doctor who testified at hearings who said fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome weren't diagnoses. He said those were just things that were made up to appease patients. And I had the book that came out every year, updated for practitioners. And there was a chapter about each of those conditions. And I would cross-examine him based on what those chapters said, what you had to do to prove the diagnosis of those conditions, and didn't this claimant have all of those triggers to create that diagnosis? And he said, that's just something to help internists appease their patients that they didn't want to bother with.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
I made that doctor look like a fool at the hearing, and he was really upset with me. Um, but I would read more medical textbooks sooner. I
Interesting. I
would,
didn't expect that.
yeah,
Yeah.
I would learn more about reading medical records sooner.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've always been good about listening to my clients. I think it took the experience to know that the triggers that the clients would tell me that would help win their cases.
Mm-hmm.
I like talking to my clients because they can often tell me something that if they told somebody else, they wouldn't realize how important it is.
Yeah.
But I think digging into the medical records, and I know there's a lot of attorneys that use AI to read medical records. I used it on one where the doctor's record said SOB, meaning the patient was short of breath. And AI said, doctor says patient is a son of a bitch. So, uh,
Maybe,
right.
but
But AI will have some benefit at some point. I would never let AI write my briefs. I let AI, with a couple different companies, write some pre-hearing memos that were a joke. And I
Mhm.
let it write a couple appeals council memos that were a joke that I didn't file.
Yeah.
I just wanted, they let me experiment with them.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
and it may be, maybe I'm a micromanager and maybe I like to do it myself. I write better now. I know what to pick out and what to do.
Hmm.
Uh, on a case a few months ago, I filed a 19,000 pages of VA medical records. I really annoyed the judge with that. This was a judge that deserved to be annoyed. But I actually read all 19,000 pages of those records. 50 years ago, it would have taken me 3 weeks to read that. I could read those 19,000 pages of medical records in 3 hours now. because I know what was important.
So
So
you know what to look for in those specific medical records.
right.
Yeah.
Now, Brian, you've been asking me questions for 3 or 4 years.
Uh-oh.
Oh,
Disability Digest is great. And Disability Digest provides incredible information. You said earlier, Social Security doesn't do anything to teach people how to file claims. Disability Digest does. And Disability Digest gives better information than any website I've ever seen. How do you make money doing all of this?
Oh, one of my
You have to
favorite
make a living too. How do you do it?
one of my favorite questions. Yeah. So, well, you know, first of all, I have to thank you because I feel we're of like minds in this collaboration that we have here. I've always believed that the information should be at no cost to people to help them get their benefits and keep their benefits, and that is how we do it with our membership. But we are a for-profit and we do make money. And for example, those that come here to get approved, we will meet with them, other advocates like Philip and Nadine, and we'll go through a strategy with them and we'll show them how they can use a course that we have that actually you have segments of that you've helped us build go through the approval process and they can do it on their own. And some people do try it. Like you said at the initial application, you know, it's possible that somebody could manage their own case if they're up to it. And others don't want to do it at the initial application and they would rather have representation. And so for us, as we are disability representatives, non-attorney, and we do work with attorneys if we need to, cases go to court, and we collaborate with you and others. And in those situations, we operate like a disability representative. We get paid like all attorneys, non-attorneys get paid the same. So that's one way in which we make money. And once somebody is approved, part of our business model is to help people get approved and stay approved. We help people with a solution to transition their health care from whatever it is that they have or don't have into Medicare. And we provide a service which is no cost to them. Many of the Medicare solutions have zero monthly premium. But we do get compensated for that, Jim, from insurance companies. So that's the second way. The third way is all of these videos that we put out there, some of them are in, have ads on them, and we're in a partnership program with Google. So those are the three ways in which we finance our efforts. So all the content and the membership is of no charge, and there's support, and you get to talk to people, and there's Philip's amazing support group that's connected to the Disability Digest. So thank you for asking one of my favorite questions, and thank you for your contribution of providing, you know, part of our no cost information.
You also provide the forms I talked about getting your doctors to fill out.
Yeah. Yeah. The disability approval course, it shows somebody what they need, what to say and do, how to fill out the initial application, how to fill out the forms they send you, what you're going to need for evidence, what to do when you go to the independent medical exam. So even somebody listening out there, if they are choose to use a disability representative that's not like you or I or somebody else out there, they should still be using, in my opinion, the disability approval course because you actually pointed it out earlier. A lot of people are like ready, aim, fire. I'm just going to hire somebody, right? But they don't know what that person should be doing or if they're doing what they should be doing right. So the disability approval course is something they should follow along and say, hey, listen, you know what? This is how I understand I should be filling out my adult function form, and you didn't coach me that way. Can you tell me why? Things like that. So, good question. Thank you.
Thanks for the
Yes.
answer. It was good for people to hear that.
Yes. Yes. Great. How about we transition to some frequently asked questions for Jim and others? Nadine.
thank you so much, Brian, and thank you, Jim. And we have covered a lot of important ground today, and I hope one of the biggest takeaways is that success in the disability process often comes down to understanding what Social Security is actually looking for, knowing what needs to be proven, and avoiding mistakes before they become problems. So, at this
Yep.
point, we would love to hear from our audience. We're going to start taking questions. And as a reminder, I'll also be posting the Zoom link in the chat for anyone who would like to join us live and ask their questions directly. So, while people are sending in their questions, I have some few FAQs here for Jim, and also we will be taking questions from Philip's group as well. Is that okay?
Okay.
All right. First question here, Jim. If someone has been out of work for only 30 days because of a sickness or injury, what is your suggested strategy for when they should apply for disability benefits and why? Is it better to apply immediately, wait for a few months, or take some other approach if their goal is to maximize their chances of approval at the initial application?
I would recommend they wait until they're off work 4 months to apply. The exception would be if they have a serious heart condition that is not repairable or if they have terminal cancer.
Hmm. Hey, Jim, I have a question on that. Are there cases where you have where they're like, I don't think they're going to get approved at initial, might as well just get it over with and get them to a hearing and you have a better chance, where there would be an exception to the rule? Does that ever come into play?
On rare occasions, uh, I like to make the record at initial whenever possible. There are some clients that I feel are so depressed, but they're not getting any mental health care. They've had 3 back surgeries, they've had both knees replaced, and their skeleton is just decrepit. And I might suggest that they ask their orthopedic surgeon or their family practitioner to refer them to a mental health therapist. And we'll file the claim right away, but start getting that mental health therapy. And by the time we get to the hearing, they will have had a year of mental health therapy. That's going to make us win the case. But
Right.
those are few and far between.
All right.
Right. Next question here. My medical records contain hundreds or even thousands of pages of diagnoses, test and treatment notes, but very little about my limitations. What advice would you give someone in that situation, and what can they do to strengthen their case?
Next time you go to your doctor, say, if I want to try to work, what limitations do I have in lifting, standing, walking, reaching, pushing, pulling, and have the doctor give you something in writing, which will also go into the records.
Good
And
point.
then it's there.
Uh, Chiming in again, Jim, excuse me. Is this an effective strategy with the VA?
It's an effective strategy with almost any medical provider.
Okay.
Okay, so in connection to that, Brian was asking about the VA. Many veterans assume that 100% VA disability rating and thousands of pages of medical records will make Social Security disability approval straightforward. Yet, we often see veterans struggle to get approved. Why does this happen, and what could veterans do to strengthen their case?
Good question.
Veterans disability rating is totally different from a Social Security disability. A veteran getting 100% disability can still be working full time. Probably 20 to 25% of the postal workers are 60 to 100% disabled at the VA, but they're still doing their full-time job, which requires you to be able to lift 70 pounds at the post office. So the fact that you're 100% disabled at the VA doesn't mean you're entitled to Social Security disability. You have to prove more than what the VA wants to get Social Security disability.
Okay. Next question, is there ever a point during the disability application process when attempting to work can actually provide useful information about a person's capability? For example, if someone genuinely tries to return to work but is not able to sustain it because of their medical condition, can an unsuccessful work attempt strengthen a disability claim? If so, what should applicants know about when to try, how to document it, and the risks involved?
That depends on when you're trying to work. If you're trying to work while the application is pending and you earn over the $1,620 a month, you've broken your period of 12 consecutive months of being unable to work. So don't go over the 1620 while the application is pending unless you've had 12 or more consecutive months of not working. If
Okay.
you've gone back to work, you have a 9-month trial work period where you can earn that much and not lose your benefit. But again, keep that log, show how difficult it is. It's fine to try to work. It's fine to show that you couldn't do it, but show how difficult it was.
Mm-hmm. Let me see if I can just drill down on this just a bit more. Somebody applies and they're denied at initial and they're in the reconsideration stage and it's been more than 12 months, right? So if they try to work in that period, they're beyond the 12-month,
Right.
right? Okay, so got it.
Yeah, and it's okay.
All right. I won't interrupt anymore, Nadine, I promise.
Yes, you can.
Yes, of course you can at any point. Anyway, at this point, I would like to turn over the microphone to Philip to ask questions from his Facebook group before I go over the questions from the audience.
All right, thank you, Nadine. Let's see, we got a few here. First one says, I'm a 38-year-old mom of 2 with PTSD, anxiety, depression, chronic migraines, fibromyalgia, IBS-C, gastroparesis, and I rely on a feeding tube for my nutrition. I'm currently in the request a hearing portion of my denial, and I'm looking for advice on how to best answer questions. With the knowledge, I do not have an attorney. And I last received a denial claim. I am not disabled, or the last denial claim I received says I'm not disabled enough. If I'm being completely honest, I do not think they looked at my medical records or the paperwork I sent in the office. My denial letter was dated April of 21. The same day they started step 4 of their appeal review. And then the website denial date was posted as May 26 when I logged into my May 25th. There was a lot there.
was. One of the questions is if she was denied in 2021, why is she just getting a hearing now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a nightmare by itself. The feeding tube should be enough to get her disability. But I'd want to see all of the medical records. It might be a date last insured. When did she last work? And is that the issue?
Yeah.
When she last worked, and did she become disabled within 5 years of when she last worked? Would be one of the questions I'd be interested in digging into with her.
Okay. If you're out there watching, send your question or answer, and then we'll get to it. All right. The next one here is: does participating in a medical studies impact approval for disability? I'm going on a year, and I'm going on a year in currently with a lawyer and waiting on our hearing date. I have heart failure and depression as my most disabling two, but a laundry list of other physical and mental health conditions. A local health organization has offered to test me for fatty liver disease, which is already in my health records, even though no doctor ever told me to my face, and enrolled me in a GLP-1 study, which would allow me to get medication that I can afford because I don't have insurance. That could help my diabetes, obesity, etc. I am worried about whether that would impact my application and approval odds.
It's a complicated question. Being in the study isn't going to affect your approval. There are some studies that say that GLP medicines are helping heart disease, but those studies are in their infancy. Before I went on a program like that, I would ask my cardiologist if he or she thought it was okay. I would also want to know why this claimant isn't getting Medicaid, and with the amount of medical bills she must have, I would apply and appeal the Medicaid denials because there should be some care somewhere for her.
Yeah. All right, last one here. So I got my mental exam notes from SSA yesterday, and the psychiatrist has me moderately impaired on all of the items that are interaction and response, with one being markedly impaired. He also confirmed my PTSD and depression diagnosis. Unsure of how, this goes with my SSDI. Today I had my physical exam. It was strange. All he was concerned with was my right ruptured Achilles. I have a number of ailments claimed. The Achilles is the one that I am out of work on. Is that why they only wanted to look at that, or just didn't have the backup medical evidence on it? He had the records of surgery and appointment records. Any thoughts?
The doctor is only allowed to examine what Social Security asks them to examine. So the claims rep or the medical department at DDS must have said to only examine the Achilles. Moderate impairment is going to make you lose.
Yeah.
You need more than moderate to have a chance of winning. So you should show that report to your attending psychologist or therapist to write something showing why that examiner was wrong, but also bring it up to the claims rep at Social Security that you have these other impairments. Why weren't you examined on them?
Okay. I do have one more that just came in. It says, I had my Social Security hearing yesterday. The vocational expert said I couldn't work. My attorney said based on that, I'd be approved. More of a statement.
Okay. If the vocational witness says, in answer to the judge's first question, there are no jobs, and the judge doesn't ask any other questions, then you've won. If the judge asks several questions and there's jobs at some of them, then you don't know what the decision's going to be. So if the attorney was confident that you won, they're probably correct.
Mm-hmm.
Good deal. Hopefully, congratulations. All right, Nadine, that's it.
Thank you so much, Philip, for asking those questions from your group. And just a reminder to everyone, I have posted a Zoom link in the chat for anyone who would like to join us live and ask their questions directly. I would encourage those of you to join us live, most especially um, Attorney James Brown is here. It's not every Wednesday that you will have the chance to ask your questions directly to him. So, first of all, before I ask these questions from the audience, Brian, I would like to thank everyone for being so engaging and, you know, very interactive right now in our chat box. They are not only asking questions, but a lot have been sharing their experience. And I also see here comments from people saying that they've been approved for disability by watching our videos. So we are glad to know that we have been of help. Thank you so much. All right. So, question here from the audience. Hello, everyone. My question is if someone is facing CDRs, how do they explain their limitations to CDRs? I have schizoaffective disorder. My limitations are fear of being followed and watched by others. I hear voices and I don't like being around crowds of people. When it's crowded on the bus, I get off and wait for the next one. It is very frustrating.
Mm.
I would add a second page or a third page. This is the kind of person that when I win their claim, I send them a notebook. And on the days that are bad days, I have them describe it in the notebook. And then they take that notebook to the local office and have them make a copy of it to file with the form that Social Security sent. But describe your feelings, make it as detailed as you can. The more you write, the more likely they are to continue your benefits. Make sure that your mental health therapist also submits their records. Sometimes the doctors are slow to submit records, and that's a good reason why claims get denied.
All right. Thanks for that, Jim. Next question. When does an ALJ work on a claim to decide steps 1 to 4 relative to the hearing date? I ask because a VE was scheduled for my hearing. Is that just a placeholder?
Most of the judges have VEs at every hearing. There's a few judges that never have a VE. There's some, even when the court remand tells them to have a VE, they won't have one. The judges all work on cases at various hours. The hearing I had today, the judge has hearing schedules at 9, 10, 11, 1, 2, and 3.
Whoa.
My guess is he'll take tomorrow off and start working on the cases the day after. But I know that this particular judge reviews his notes. Sometimes he listens to portions of the hearing again. Sometimes he rereads parts of the medical again, and then starts writing his decision or tells his staff attorney to start writing the decision. So they're all different in how they do it.
Okay. Next question. When you say stop working, do you mean totally quit or just working under SGA?
When I say work under SGA, I mean work to it no more than 3/4 of SGA. And that would be okay then.
Okay. Next question. If your back pay, for example, is from 2012 to 2023, did that person still have to wait 5 months before applying?
No, because they've been off work more than 5 months now. So they can just apply right away.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Next question. A friend of mine, oh, I think this is more of a statement. So I'm just going to skip this one for now. Next question. If I haven't worked between my AOD and DLI, does that mean I have no past relevant work at step 4? In your experience, do ALJs generally follow that rule?
They have some who do and some who don't. My client today had a date last insured of 12/31/24. Her alleged onset date was March of 22. Now, some judges would have said there's no past relevant work. This judge said her past relevant work was the work she was doing in 2018 and 2019. So it depends on the judge.
Next question here is from someone who is her first time to watch our show. So, welcome. Thank you for being here. Her question is, could you speak to a situation if 65-year-old person who are parolees, I don't know if this is applicable to us, but I'm going to ask anyway, who are parolees if they are eligible for disability benefits after 30 years of incarceration?
No, because they don't have any past relevant work. It's one of the things the Innocence Project is working on, that people while they're in jail have to work, but they get no Social Security credits for the work they did. And it's one of those unfair parts of the prison system is you ought to get some credits. Some people who get out of jail because they're found to be innocent get no credits for what they did while they were wrongfully incarcerated. So, but no, that person couldn't apply for disability. If they had enough earnings to get retirement benefits, they could get those.
All right. Next question here. Can back pay denial be appealed after you are already receiving benefits without losing current benefits?
Yes, as long as you file it within time.
And we do have a couple of questions here from our Facebook audience as well. I am in reconsideration stage. My family doctor, therapist, and orthopedic surgeon have submitted the functional capacity form, and the orthopedic surgeon has stated there isn't anything left to try. Can you recommend anything else to submit to improve chances of getting approved?
Yeah.
The doctor should have submitted all of their records. That's important in addition to the functional capacity form, is to have all of the office records. The other thing is, what are you being treated for? If you're being treated for a shoulder injury and there's nothing left to try, why couldn't you do a job using foot pedals? So it's a matter of what's the diagnosis also.
All right. Next question. This is also from Facebook. Do you handle SSDI cases where the disability onset date is before the date last insured? I was diagnosed later but had documented symptoms years earlier. I stopped working in 2011, developed documented neurological symptoms, diagnosed MS in 2018.
Depends on whether there was medical care prior. If there was medical care with those symptoms before the date last insured, and the diagnosis wasn't made until later, you can sometimes prove that this was a disabling condition before the date last insured. If you don't have good medical care prior to the DLI, then it's going to be an impossible case to win.
Yeah.
All right. Next question. This one is from YouTube. Help me understand why Attorney James Brown said claimants can get 19 months of back pay. However, the examples provided only state 12 months of back pay, not 19.
I think I was giving an example there where I said they go back 12 months from when you applied. And in that example, the person applied probably 2 years after she stopped working.
Yes,
And
that was
so
it.
Social Security wasn't going to go back to the date she stopped working. They were only going to go back 12 months from the date we applied for disability.
Yeah. I remember it as 2 years, which is 24 months. There was a 5-month waiting period, which leaves 19 possible months, but the person could only get 12 because that's the max. That sound right?
I think that's it.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for explaining that. Those are all the questions that I have from the audience. Not unless if Brian have any other questions he would like to ask Jim.
No, I want to be respectful
Also,
of Jim's time here, and we've been at it for a while. So we are going to thank Philip, and we're going to thank Nadine, but most especially Jim. I want to thank you. It's been great. It's a lot of really common questions that people have, and I can tell by the engagement there's been, people are really into what we've covered here today. So that's great. So for those of you listening out there, there are some questions about different things, and you understand, hopefully, if you listen to the whole program, the benefits of the Disability Digest. You can come in here, no cost membership will help you get approved, stay approved. And like there were certain questions that you have. If you have an interest in speaking with Attorney Brown, you can just ask one of the advocates, and they can have a brief convo with you and make sure that it's a fit. And then we'll set up a time for you to talk with Attorney Brown. But thanks everybody for listening. And Jim, we're going to have you back, right?
September 16th.
September 16th for the next show. That will be awesome. Hard to believe that. Summer will be done then. So
That's right. It'll be
yeah,
almost fall.
almost fall. So everybody, listen. Thank you for your attention out there. We wish you well, and stay tuned for the next show. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another show, but Jim will be in September. So God
Enjoy
bless
your summer,
everybody.
everyone.
Yep, make it a great day. Be well.
Thanks